Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler episode 736. Today the Amateur Traveler talks about atolls and motus, scuba and wine, pelagics and poisson cru as we go to French Polynesia. Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Let's talk about French Polynesia. I'd like to welcome to the show Caleb Sedam from Indiana, a patron of the show and who has come to talk to us about French Polynesia. Caleb, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. It's an honor to be on your show today.
That always surprises me when people say that. We were during the latest patron call, we were talking about places that we should cover on the show, and Caleb mentioned he had taken a recent trip to French Polynesia. And Caleb, why should people go to French Polynesia?
Well, Chris, imagine French Polynesia as the dream destination. When you think of some place where palm trees and beautiful beaches and it's idyllic in the back of your mind, that is French Polynesia every day of the year. French Polynesia is a beautiful group of islands in the South Pacific. They're known, obviously, for their beaches, their good weather, their beautiful blue waters. But French Polynesia also has many activities for people of all loves, desires. They have everything from hiking. Actually, they have some great hiking in the South Pacific. They're great for scuba divers, snorkelers. If you love the water, they have a kite surfing school. They have fishing, sunset cruises. So no matter what you're looking for, French Polynesia has it somewhere on one of its islands.
Excellent. And we should say, first off, that Caleb does not work for the Tahiti Tourism Board or anywhere down there. We don't bring those people on the show. I love them greatly, but I don't bring on people who are paid to say that. Excellent. And what kind of itinerary are you going to recommend for us?
So I'm going to recommend basically the itinerary that I took when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, French Polynesia is made up of hundreds of little islands, but the one I'm going to suggest is we're going to start in Tahiti itself, the main island in French Polynesia. Then we're going to move on to Bora Bora, which most people have heard of. It's a very popular vacation destination. And then we're going to head to the atoll of Rangiroa. Rangiroa is a little off the beaten path, but there's still plenty of interesting things to do there. It's known as a diving destination, but it's a perfect place for all people.
Excellent. So you're starting us in Tahiti. We're going to fly in there.
Correct. So coming from the United States, you can either come out of Seattle or San Francisco on United, or out of Los Angeles on Delta, or Air Tahiti Nui, which is French Polynesia's main airline. So if you've heard the term before, all roads lead to Rome. Well, in French Polynesia, all roads lead to Tahiti, specifically the capital in Papeete. So we're going to fly into Papeete. That is where you are going to start your trip. So there are a few things to do in Papeete that I experienced, and I think most of your listeners would enjoy. One of the main attractions in the capital itself is called Le Marché. So Le Marché is the large downtown central market like you find in most cities, either throughout Europe or the developing world. The market itself reminds me of the market in Budapest, if any of your listeners had been there before.
Okay.
And so you can go in, and on the base floor, it opens at around 4 a.m, and on the base floor you can find crafts, handy goods, pearls, food. They have a whole section where they're selling vegetables, fruits, fruit juices. And then up above on the second floor are mostly boutique style shops as opposed to just table stalls.
Okay.
From there are plenty of other places to go shopping if you're a shopping lover. Billabong tends to be a pretty popular brand in Papeete, so there's plenty of little boutiques that sell high-end clothing, such as that. They sell perfume. There's also some small mom-and-pop shops that sell everything from plastic bouquets of flowers for weddings or funerals to selling plug-in adapters. So make sure you pick up one of those.
Well, and we're talking about a country that is, if you hadn't picked up from talking about French Polynesia, it is French-speaking. Are the adapters also European-style adapters? I don't remember.
Yes, they are. So they're the two-prong European-style adapters.
Got it.
From there, there's also plenty of small restaurants and cafes. Most of them, of course, it's a tropical country, so you can sit outside, you can drink a beer. They also have Tahitian wine, which we'll talk about a little later, that you can pick up, and excellent food. So my suggestion is just pick some place around the market, sit down and relax and people watch. It's a largely pedestrian city in the central part of Papeete, and it's also right up against the marina in the ocean, so you can watch the ships come in and out and just enjoy yourself.
Now, one thing that I hear people talk about when they talk about French Polynesia in general and Tahiti specifically is that it's not a cheap destination. Is that your experience?
Yes, that is my experience. So being that almost everything has to be imported into Tahiti, the prices of everything are increased considerably. For instance, a bag of Doritos chips, a large party-sized bag of Doritos chips here in the U.S. costs around $4 roughly. The equivalency over there would be $7.50.
Okay.
So just to give you a little bit of a price comparison.
And I won't even give you a hard time about going to Tahiti and eating Doritos, but...
Well, it was more of a crime of opportunity, let's put it that way.
All right.
So other things you can do on Tahiti, I did not take advantage of this just due to my constrained schedule, but you can take advantage of excellent hiking in the center. Tahiti in the center of the island is known for its waterfalls and its lush jungles. There are also some excellent sunset cruises you can do around the island of Tahiti itself, as well as 4x4 adventures. Or people are also known to go biking around the entirety of the island. Okay. Just as a few extra tidbits for you.
Now, I think of Tahiti as being marketed quite a lot as a over-the-water bungalow honeymoon destination, you were not there as that sort of consumer, unless things have changed and I don't know about them. But you were there more as a scuba diver backpacker. Is that about right?
That's correct. So the main purpose of my trip there is I went with a group. There was 8 of us in total, and we went to French Polynesia for 2 weeks to go scuba diving. So we spent a week in Bora Bora and then a week in Rangiroa itself.
Okay. And then were you then doing the overwater bungalow, or are there less expensive accommodations?
Well, I think this is actually a perfect segue into going to Bora Bora, because this is where most of the accommodations, especially the overwater bungalows, this is where those were invented, and I think that's a perfect segue into that next part.
Okay.
So my next suggestion would then, obviously, once you're from Tahiti, I would go to Bora Bora. When you fly into Tahiti, they have flights going from Tahiti to Bora Bora several times a day. So my suggestion would fly into Tahiti, maybe take a little time in the morning at the market, and then fly to Bora Bora in the afternoon. So in Bora Bora, as you alluded to, Chris, is known for its overwater bungalows. It's known for being a pricier destination in the islands of French Polynesia themselves. So there are inexpensive lodgings on Bora Bora, however. So you can, if you're more of the rustic type, they have Airbnbs that are as cheap as $30, or they have over-the-water bungalows that are 2 stories, hot tubs, jacuzzi for $10,000 a night.
Okay. The other was probably more my price range, but okay.
So going back to more my price range, the resort I stayed at was called the Hotel Mai Tai, and they had a range of price options and rooms. So the one I stayed at was a regular room. It was up on the hill overlooking the lagoon. It was about $250 per night.
Okay.
So not unreasonable by any means. One of the couples that went on the dive trip were actually there on their honeymoon.
Okay.
And so they did stay in an overwater bungalow. And at that particular resort, the Hotel Mai Tai, that cost $750 a night.
Okay.
So there is quite a difference depending on what you want, but there are affordable or at least semi-affordable options depending on your budget.
Okay. Good to know. So you were there at Bora Bora for the diving predominantly.
Yes, predominantly, but I am a curious soul, so I would dive in the morning, usually from 8 a.m. to noon, and then after that, I would find something else to do on the island, and I even had a free day, which I took to do some activities as well. So we can get into those if you'd like.
Please.
I was in Bora Bora primarily for diving, as you alluded to. And if you're a diver, scuba diver, Bora Bora is a great destination to go diving. Bora Bora is particularly known for its manta ray diving. There is a canyon underwater in the lagoon where the manta rays do their dance. They swim over you. They circle. It's excellent for that. Bora Bora is also known for its sharks, its reef sharks. So they're quite safe, but you can find them sometimes 15 to 20 at a time, which if you're a diver, you know that's not generally a typical sight. They also have excellent coral life. Now, that being said, it's also a perfect area for snorkelers. If you're not a scuba diver, don't worry. Snorkeling is excellent there as well, because many of the places that the divers go to, the snorkelers can also go to, but you'll just have to stay up to about the 60 feet. But there's plenty of sharks, stingrays, manta rays for the snorkelers to see as well.
Are there particular spots that you would recommend for either scuba or for snorkeling?
It really just depends on the tides that are coming in.
Okay.
It really just depends on the waves in the lagoon. The lagoon can get rather rough because of the trade winds, so it just all depends. But one thing I would suggest is I sometimes wish, rather than actually going diving out into the lagoon, I had all my diving gear right off the beach in front of my resort. I decided to go snorkeling right off my resort one day, and actually I saw better fish and wildlife that day than I actually saw on my diving excursion in the morning, because you can just go 20 feet out into the water and there's beautiful coral reefs right there. I swam no more than 50 out and saw a rather large spotted eagle ray. So if you don't have time to go out snorkeling on a formal charter, or if it's too rough, by all means, just go right out in front of your resort. And sometimes you can see some better wildlife than if you actually went on a charter.
Well, and one thing we haven't talked about is the island of Bora Bora is a fascinating in terms of just the shape of it and the construction of it. So it's not as tall as Tahiti, but it does have a center island that has some height to it. And then it has a lagoon, let's say, all the way around the center island. Would that be fair to say, with a sort of an exterior ring around that of Moore Island? I mean, it has the shape of an old top of a caldera for a volcano. I have no idea what the geology is of this particular island, but it's a fascinating looking island. It's almost like it's inside out.
Yes, that is fair to say. It is an interesting island. The way it was explained to me was what you're seeing, what's actually above the water on the main part of the island, the main island itself, was once part of the side of the volcano. Mm-hmm. And actually where part of the lagoon is now is where the caldera sunk below the waves. And then around the main island itself are what are called motus. And as you said, they create a ring around the actual island itself. Most of the motus around Bora Bora are privately owned by the resorts. One of the motus actually has the airport on it, which you need to take a ferry from the airport to the main island. Okay. But yes, it is a rather interesting island in terms of how it's shaped.
Now, the resorts themselves are in the inner island predominantly then?
So they're on both. The resort I stayed at was on the inner island, but there are also resorts like the Intercontinental, which can be out on the motus themselves.
Got it. Okay. And then you're actually doing most of your diving, or at least most of your snorkeling, inside the lagoon, or are you doing some of the diving outside?
There is some, particularly if you're looking for sharks, there is some that is done outside of the motu, outside the outer ring itself. Okay. But there is excellent snorkeling and diving within the lagoon itself.
Okay. Interesting. And then you said that you spent the afternoon doing some other activities. What other activities did you do?
So there are a few activities that I would suggest that I did, and hopefully you'll find interesting as well. If you are a history buff, Bora Bora actually has some World War II history to it. During World War II, the U.S. had a supply and fuel station on Bora Bora. There were 5,000 American troops there, and they actually positioned cannons strategically around the islands to guard the main pass into the lagoon of Bora Bora. So you can take today 4x4 tours and you can go up and see these guns and these bunkers that protected the strategic interests of Bora Bora and the U.S. military during World War II.
Okay.
So that's one thing I would recommend if you're definitely into history. Another thing you could do, which I enjoyed, was most of your resorts, particularly if you're staying on the main island, you can rent bicycles for the day. The cost of that is about $20 for 8 hours, and you can ride around the entire island of Bora Bora. The entire island is about 20 miles around. It is a fair ride. It's not that hilly. There are some places where it's a little steep. Just be careful of the wind. Kind of seems to push in your face from every direction, but it's that can get a little tiring.
You just described my entire biking experience, but okay.
So do watch out for that, but I would highly recommend it because you get to see Bora Bora from each side. You get a more intimate view of the locals and their way of life. And if you there are some side roads you can take. And those side roads lead up to more forested parts of the island where you can find a place just to sit, have a picnic, and enjoy yourself.
Okay. Interesting.
One other thing I would suggest, if none of that kind of physical activity is your repertoire, then you can go into town, into Vapete. Vapete is the administrative hub of Bora Bora, and that's where you'll find your grocery stores and most of your shopping. Okay. So if you want to go to the Pearl Market, for instance, you can go to the Pearl Market. It's called Pearl de Memeti. It's one I would suggest. Also, there is a craft cooperative in Vapete, and they make pario. And what pario is, it's a traditional wraparound skirt that women take and they dye and they add different patterns such as flowers or trees to the skirt itself. It makes a perfect gift, and it's a great way to support the local community there, since throughout French Polynesia, 95% of their economy is tourism based.
Okay. Interesting. A tough year for French Polynesia, probably, then.
It definitely was, for talking from the locals. That's one of the reasons why French Polynesia reopened to tourism on July 15th of this year, just because it was so crippling to the economy.
Okay.
On Bora Bora, one of their more popular attractions, although possibly a little different, is they have a kite surfing school.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yes, and for those of you who are not familiar with kite surfing, you literally have basically a wakeboard that is on your feet, and then you have a parachute, essentially, or a kite that comes out from a chest harness that you have attached to you. And you go to this school and you learn to ride the trade winds across the lagoon. So you ride your board, and then you can turn the kite itself using a swivel, and you can move back the other direction. And watching some of the locals do it, they get great airtime. And I was kind of jealous that I wasn't able to try it myself. It is a 2-day kite surfing school. So if you do have the time and the interest, I would definitely recommend it, just based on how much fun the locals were having.
Well, and even if you're not doing it, I have found that watching kite surfers is great fun. I've had a chance to do it both locally here as well as on some of our travels, and it's a fascinating thing to watch somebody who really knows what they're doing, who is taking the kite and going up on some of the waves, as you say, and getting airtime or that kind of thing is pretty fun.
It's interesting to watch how athletic many of these kite surfers are as they actually ride the waves. It reminds me almost of wakeboarding or water skiing here in the U.S., but just a different mode of power behind you.
Got it.
The final thing I would suggest about Bora Bora, and I was able to participate in part of this, is Bora Bora is well known also for hikers. So the two peaks on Bora Bora, you have Mount Bahai and Mount Odamanu. There are some people that decide to hike up to the top or as close as you can to the top of those peaks. You do need a guide. It's about a 7-hour day, and they are strenuous, but you can see most of the island from up top.
Okay.
And once you get to a high enough elevation and you can look over the lagoon, the blues and the hues are absolutely gorgeous in the lagoon itself. It's 50 shades of blue all over, and it changes no matter where you look. And if you're still wanting to hike but not necessarily take something as strenuous, I ended up meeting a local just out of normal conversation, and he said, well, why don't I take you on a hike? Most of the property on Bora Bora is privately owned, but just through meeting him, he took me up behind where my resort was and onto the ridge up there. And people put little shelters up there where you can picnic and watch the water, watch the ocean. There's also small churches scattered throughout the ridges where people come up 8 to 10 at a time and just worship on Sundays. So I would definitely suggest, if you end up friending some Polynesians, local Polynesians, you never know what that could lead to.
Good to know. Anything else we want to cover on Bora Bora?
If you're into the food scene, there is a restaurant there called Bloody Mary's. It is quite popular with most people. Several stars have been there, movie stars. The food trucks are also a popular scene. So definitely check out the food. Of course, being in an island nation, the seafood is absolutely excellent. So if you are into seafood, I would definitely try that.
Okay. Excellent. Before we get to your next stop, the other thing I wanted to say that I forgot to bring it up earlier is you mentioned that one of the ways of getting to Tahiti, which is where we're flying in, was Air Tahiti Nui. And the one thing that people should be aware of is if you don't have as long a time, you can also add on Tahiti to a trip, for instance, to New Zealand, if you fly Air Tahiti Nui, there are stopovers that you can do. Right now, they're actually including 3 free nights in Tahiti with a stopover if you're flying to Auckland from the States. And so that's an option if you want to get a taste of Tahiti that's less than our usual 1 week sort of trip, but you can combine it with other trips if you're flying that airline. It's similar to if you fly to Europe through Iceland on Iceland Air, you can get a free stopover, or some of the other national carriers have that kind of deal.
No, that's an excellent. I wasn't aware of that. I do know that Air Tahiti Nui also flies out of Tokyo as well, so it may just be another, if you have some time and want to take a route. I don't know that they have as good of deals, but definitely a place to stop at on your way across the ocean.
Excellent. Where to next?
So after Bora Bora, the next place I went, and I would suggest you go as well, would be to the atoll of Rangiroa. So we're going to switch gears a little bit here. Bora Bora is definitely geared for tourists. There's many different activities to do. It's more developed. But when you get to Rangiroa, Rangiroa to me was the most remote place I felt I had ever been. Rangiroa is an atoll, which means that it's made up by coral growing out of the ocean. It is over 110 miles in circumference. And the actual land itself it's made out of many different motus, and it's only can be 100 feet wide in some places.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of Rangiroa, and my first thought is, where's the island? It is mostly water.
You would be correct, and that is part of its charm. So most, like I said, the actual atoll itself is made up of many motus, and these motus separate the ocean from the lagoon in the center. On Rangiroa, you will mainly stay, eat, and visit places on the main motus near the villages of Taputa and Avitoru.
Okay.
That's where most of the activity happens. That's where the airport is. You'll fly from Bora Bora to Tahiti, and then Tahiti to Rangiroa.
Okay.
And when you land, there isn't any public transportation on the island except for if you're going to rent a bicycle. So my suggestion is make sure that your resort, if you're with the dive company originally, make sure that they're going to come and pick you up, because you can walk to the airport, but from experience, it's not something I would suggest.
Got it.
So when you get to Rangiroa, Rangiroa is known worldwide as one of the best drift dives in the entire world. For people who aren't necessarily familiar with diving, drift diving is where the current is strong, so the dive company will drop you in one place, and the current will pull you and carry you along across the reef, through the pass, so it's less strenuous and you just drift your way through. The main attraction there in terms of wildlife and in terms of the reef basin would be Taputa Pass. Taputa Pass is known for its large pelagics, so sharks are the big attraction. When I was there, I saw a hammerhead shark, varieties of reef shark, and whale sharks are also common in the area. Taputa Pass is also known for its dolphins. There were many times that dolphins played in our bow wake, and at one point, even a pod of dolphins came up to my group, and I was able to touch the dolphin under the water. So if you are a diver and like that, I would highly suggest Taputa Pass. It is worth your visit. If you are not a diver, you can still do some snorkeling activities in the area, as the lagoon and the surrounding ocean are full of wonderful marine life and corals. So I would highly recommend that. Or I would also recommend, if you're not a diver, to go take a boat excursion into Taputa Pass to go watch the dolphins in the morning and the evening.
Now, you used a technical term when you were talking about the type of fish, and you said pelagics.
Yes.
Which I didn't know. Not a diver. Have dived once, I think. So can you define what you're talking about?
Yes. So pelagics tends to be larger marine creatures such as sharks, for instance. Sharks are what I think of generally when I think of pelagic. So whale sharks, reef sharks, hammerhead sharks in particular.
Okay. What else are we doing on Rangiroa? Rangiroa.
Rangiroa. So on Rangiroa, there are a couple of other interesting activities. Rangiroa has French Polynesia's only winery, and it's the only atoll winery in the world.
Okay. I'm guessing there are not the usual vineyards as that I would expect to see somewhere else.
They are not typical. These vineyards have been particularly cultivated over the years, specifically to allow the grapes to grow. And they only grow varieties of grapes to make white wines. And they only make 4 types of white wine.
Okay.
So if that's something you're interested in, if you are a wine connoisseur, definitely worth checking out. They have a tasting room, and they also have tours to the vineyard itself. You can get right on their website. It's called Vin Tahiti, VIN space DE space Tahiti. And you can get right on their website and book a tour directly through them via email. It's super easy.
Not what I would expect in Tahiti or in French Polynesia. Yeah.
I didn't expect it either, but it was a pleasant surprise nonetheless. Some other things people generally tend to do, because Rangiroa is so remote and mostly uninhabited, there's only about 2,500 people there. You can take day trips out of Taputa. So you can take day trips to the Blue Hole, is a very famous spot. It's essentially a lagoon within the lagoon. It's where the lagoon becomes deeper, and you can dive it if you're a scuba diver or enjoy it if not. They also have a motu, which has pink sands. Crushed pink seashells over time have created pink sand that mixes with the white, so it creates a beautiful pink hue across the motus. People also enjoy doing picnics. I would highly suggest that. It's nice to just get on a bike, grab a sandwich, go find a secluded place on the motu, and sit and watch the waves come in from either the ocean side or watch the more tranquil lagoon side.
Now, in terms of the accommodations there, this seems like this is going to be somewhat different from the over-the-water bungalow in Bora Bora here.
Correct. Rangiroa is not known for its overwater bungalows. You can still find nice little on-land bungalows, however.
Okay.
Where I stayed on Rangiroa, rather than having a hotel-style room, I had my own bungalow, which had a small little kitchenette with a microwave. It had its own bathroom space. It had a front porch, and it had a bed/living area to it. And that seems to be the case for most of the resorts on Rangiroa.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, being that Rangiroa is a little more remote and there's not as much to do, you can do some shopping. They're known for their pearl diving on Rangiroa. You can do that. There's also some nice artisan stores where you can buy local crafts and even local honey raised from bees on Rangiroa. My suggestion would definitely be doing a dine around on Rangiroa. And why I say that is because there are actually very well done family restaurants across the atoll itself. And I have a couple suggestions for you. One suggestion in the village of Taputa is called Chez Lele. It's basically Lele's place, translated from French. And when you go there, Lele herself, she is from Madagascar originally. And it's one of those restaurants where the menu is written out on the chalkboard for the day. And that's what they have, and that is your selection. Usually 8 to 10 things you can choose from. You order it, and it's made fresh right back in the kitchen, and you can watch the ladies work the entire time.
Okay.
One of the main dishes in French Polynesia, often considered the national dish, it's called poisson cru. It is, for those listeners who know what ceviche is, it's similar.
Got it.
But it is cut up fish mixed with coconut milk, vegetables, and lime juice.
Okay.
It is a culinary experience, to say the least. was not one of my favorite dishes, but I would definitely recommend trying it because you're in Tahiti. It's the national dish, so worth your time to be a little adventurous, culinarily speaking.
And I have to say that it's one of those things you should not translate because poisson cru sounds much better than raw fish to me. But
yes, it does. French has a way of making things that we say in English sound much better when they're translated.
I agree.
For those of you who aren't into raw fish, there are other general restaurants that you can find along the entire length of the Motu. One of my favorites too was called Rio, R-I-O, and it's a family-owned restaurant. They served homemade oven-baked pizzas.
Okay.
And you could get them with fresh mozzarella, you could get them with pineapple, mushroom, anything to order that you wanted. They also were really good with their hamburgers or their chicken burgers, and the buns were made fresh every day.
Got it.
My group went for lunch one day and tried to order a hamburger, all of us, and the lady's like, no, only 4 of you can order hamburgers because we've run out of homemade buns.
Interesting.
On Rangiroa, I would definitely suggest doing more of a culinary experience. To me, it was better trying the small mom and pop restaurants than actually staying in your resort and eating your resort food all the time. That got old after a while. You could have a much better culinary experience elsewhere.
Excellent. Anything else we want to talk about in terms of your itinerary? One thing we should talk about is timing, because we usually talk about a 1-week itinerary.
Yes. So it's an 8-hour flight from Los Angeles to Tahiti. So if you're going to go, I would suggest going longer than 1 week. If you cannot go for longer than 1 week, you can definitely see Tahiti, Bora Bora, and Rangiroa within a span of about a Saturday to a following Sunday. You will be busy, but it is possible. One thing I would note, if you are a diver, you would want to take more than 1 week in French Polynesia simply because when you're a scuba diver, you have to watch out for flying and diving too close together because of the nitrogen content you breathe into your body. So I would recommend for divers taking a longer time to make it more practical.
Well, and I noticed that you're flying in between the islands, too, so you're resetting the clock on those shorter flights as well?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Now that you mentioned flights, I would note a few things about that. When you are flying inter-island, you have to watch your luggage very carefully, just the weight. On the inter-island flights on Air Tahiti, they have a very strict weight limit of 50 pounds.
Okay.
And if you are a diver, if you are a diver and you show your dive card, you are allowed 11 extra pounds of weight for your dive gear.
Okay.
But do be very careful. When we were coming out of Bora Bora, one of our group had gone on a shopping spree and had bought a little too much stuff for their bag. And so they were overweight by just a few pounds, and the lady was going to charge them $100 extra.
Okay. Good to
So
know.
if you're going to go, I would definitely pack light going there, or know someone who does pack light so that you can send some of your stuff with them.
Got it. Excellent. Anything else we want to talk about in terms of the general itinerary before we get to some of our wrap-up questions?
In terms of itinerary, if you're going from a weather standpoint, May through October tends to be cool and dry.
Okay.
Where on the flip side, November through April tends to be wet and rainy. But of course, you're in the tropics, so that can change any moment. But in general, those are the best times to go. If you're a diver, many of the pelagics, so the whale sharks, the hammerheads, come in at around October, November. So if you're looking for those wildlife opportunities, I would definitely try diving in those times.
Okay. Good to know. Caleb, you are standing in the prettiest spot in French Polynesia. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
Oh, that is so hard because there were 2 very particular spots.
Okay.
that stuck out to me. So the one per island, but if I had to pick just one, it would be standing in Rangiroa, watching the sun go down over the lagoon, sun halfway hidden behind the clouds, and beautiful shades of red and orange cast across the sky and onto the lagoon itself.
Excellent. What was the one you didn't choose? I'm curious.
The one I didn't choose also deals with the lagoon, but that is in Bora Bora, watching the lagoon at midday, at high noon, when the water across the entire lagoon changes different hues of blue every second. Depending where you look, it could be turquoise here, deep blue here, sky blue there.
One thing that makes you laugh, and say only in French Polynesia.
One thing that makes me laugh is when you go to French Polynesia as an American and you end up hating French fries.
Okay, and you were hating them because...
So French Polynesia does not actually have a lot of fresh vegetables. So when you get a meal, your sides are either green beans or they are French fries. Lots and lots of French fries.
Got it.
So when that is your only vegetable, quote unquote, for 2 weeks, you really get tired of them by the end.
Now, are they served with mayonnaise in proper French fashion, or can you at least get ketchup?
Oh, they are absolutely served with mayonnaise.
Okay,
but you can also get ketchup and mix the two.
Okay, good to know. And if you had to summarize French Polynesia in just 3 words, Caleb, what 3 words would you use?
I would use unparalleled, natural, beauty.
Excellent. Our guest again has been Caleb Sedam. And Caleb, thanks so much for coming on Amateur Traveler. Well, thank you, first of all, for supporting Amateur Traveler, but also thanks for coming on and telling us about your love for French Polynesia.
Thank you, Chris, for giving me this opportunity. It's been great to share it with all of you.
Again, I want to put out a thank you to patrons like Caleb who help support Amateur Traveler. You also can do that at patreon.com/Amateur Traveler. I'd also like to thank the people who left a review for the show. I'm still catching up somewhat from the summer, but I had reviews from Sarita7981 on Apple Podcasts. It said, been listening since around 2008 and enjoy being transported in my mind, even if I can't always travel. I enjoy hearing about destinations outside the USA. And then from Sarsaria, Chris hosts one of the best travel podcasts out there. He always has interesting questions. His guests are very local and knowledgeable. He is also entertaining to listen to. He always gives the best, diverse, and interesting itineraries and the local resources to destinations, places. He is so good that he had me thinking about visiting places I never thought about would be interesting to visiting, like Nebraska, Gulf Coast road trip in Mississippi, etc. Thanks so much. Always great to hear. And then from Insight Pittsburgh, this is one of my favorite podcasts. I enjoy listening to the various places described by many different guides, even more so during the pandemic. I listen to all the episodes, and when I'm planning a trip, I first go back and listen again to the episode of the destination on Amateur Traveler. Chris's interviewing style is comfortable, friendly, and positive. He fact checks the interviewee, so take comfort that you're getting an accurate picture. If you love travel, then you will love this podcast no matter what my plans. I always listen to the Amateur Traveler. And then lastly, from Backstreet's Back All Right, just what I was looking for in a travel podcast. I'm a terribly picky person when it comes to podcasts, and this fits the bill. The host is professional and has the right voice. Most of all, sorry. Most and not all guests are great, but occasionally he will get a dud. Understandably, though, and I'm not going to knock off a star for this. Keep it up. Thanks so much. And for all of you who left reviews, I appreciate it. With that, I'm going to wish you a happy New Year, since I'm recording this just before New Year's and it will come out just after. And thank you all for listening in 2020 or in the future.